So this is Todd from TT Bike Fit and Vertex Fit Systems, and we wanted to look at one fit characteristic that we find in many of the best cyclists in both road and Ironman for TT or tri position. So here, of course, we're looking at Chris Froome, and this is a shot from the Vuelta last year, and we're going to look at I want to look at this one prime feature. Now, I think everybody's heard of hip angle being an important feature. So let's just set the level on his bike. Say he's tipped up at 1 degree right there. We look at the angle of the thigh at the top of the pedal stroke. So this is at its maximum height. The knee is at its maximum vertical displacement, and here we're getting about 27 degrees. If you take away that degree that the bike is tipped up in this shot, then we're talking about 28 degrees. So what's so significant about that? Well, that number, plus or minus a degree or two, comes up again and again in some of the best riders in the TT position. However, in our experience of working with now thousands of everyday riders in bike fits, it is extremely rare, at least on a relative basis, to see someone set up with this type of a hip angle on their tri or TT bike. And our experiments on their Vertex Fit Cycle indicate that riders can actually self-select this angle just based on feel. And so we're going to look at that. How about some of the best Ironman riders? Here's Cam Wurf, Kona record holder, course record holder on the bike, former pro cyclist. So let's take a look at that same angle on him. Okay, so to be fair, he's tipped down about 2 degrees. 28, we take away those 2 degrees. Let's look at Jan Frodeno, 28 degrees. 31 minus 3, 28 degrees. I'm going to emphasize again that we almost never see anyone come into our fit studio set up with this kind of hip angle. And, you know, I'm only looking at the angle of the thigh relative to horizontal. The other part of the equation, of course, is the torso angle. But here we're assuming elite position, so we're going to assume essentially dead horizontal torso angles are darn close to it. So that's going to be fairly consistent across all of these guys. How about Seb Keenly? This is from 2016. Potentially somewhat less, maybe 24 degrees, still in the mid-20s. So what are the factors that contribute to this? One is going to be effective seat angle. How steep is the rider sitting? What angle are they sitting relative to the bottom bracket? Here he's probably at 79, which is a pretty popular angle. Is not overly steep. You'll see some of these other guys steeper than that, but it certainly fits in the range of somewhere in the 78 to 83 range is going to be required to obtain this type of angle. Certainly raising the saddle height will do it too, but of course we don't want to do that just to get the hip angle. The saddle height needs to be at the most efficient saddle height. So we really want to isolate those two variables. Crank length is going to be an important contributor as well. So all things being equal, a longer crank is going to push your knee up further. It's going to tighten up this hip angle. Finally, the relative proportion of upper leg to lower leg. So if you have a longer thigh, a longer femur, it's going to be easier for you to have an open hip angle like this. Because effectively, for the same given saddle height, your lower leg is going to be less tall, letting your knee be down further, and it's going to effectively act as if you had a shorter crank on there. I should also mention that in general, someone with a tall saddle height or a high saddle height, long legs, is going to have an easier time achieving such a hip angle than a smaller person. The reason being that crank lengths don't vary as much as saddle heights or inseam lengths. So that has gotten better recently, and most people are becoming aware of this. But simply, if you take the proportion of, say, a tall person with 80 centimeter saddle height and 175 cranks, compare that to a smaller person with a 65 centimeter saddle height. That would be equivalent to a much shorter crank. So we can look at this then, visualize this better, and how to determine this angle for individual rider using our Vertex Fit Cycle. So the unique thing about the Vertex is that we're able to swing the rider through a range of seat angles while keeping all the other fit variables constant. That's because the bottom bracket swings in a radial fashion from the vertex point, or the rider's contact point on the saddle, essentially the center of the rider's contact point, which is directly above this clamp right here. So here we were starting a rider at 75 to 76 degrees on seat angle and swinging them all the way back to 85. So we'll be swinging the bottom bracket through an arc from 76 to 85. It's not a straight line movement, and nothing else on the bike moves. Remember, it is literally swinging from this point on the saddle. So basically, what we would do in this type of investigation is, start the rider slacker than we know, is going to be an unacceptable position. Have them riding at a fairly high output level, in this case about 90% of FTP, and swing the bike through. And the rider will be able to feel the difference in the effort level and the comfort level and the efficiency as they're pedaling, as this is swinging. So we can watch in real time what happens with this rider here.
Okay, so that's the slack seat angle, fairly hard resistance, and we're going to swing all the way up to 85 degrees here and see the rider's reaction and look at angles. Still getting better, or?
Yeah, but now, honestly, I'm thinking behind me.
So now it's too steep.
It's way too steep.
Okay. So then let's swing it back the other direction. So you can tell me about what point it starts to feel right.
Yep,
Right around there.
that's good.
Now is it starting to get worse?
Yes, worse now.
Okay.
Okay, so we saw what happened there in real time. Let's start with the very slack position, which we know is too slack. And let's look at the rider's hip angle and the effective seat angle. Now, we already have her on relatively short cranks, 165 millimeter cranks in this case. This is something we also investigated here on the Vertex Fit Cycle, and we arrived at 165 for her as the best combination. But keeping those constant, if we look at the effective seat angle here, like we said, she's around 76. And at this point, she is right around 21 degrees or so. And that's an angle that I frequently see riders come into the fit studio set up at. And also shallower than that, even say in the teens, okay? But say around 20, 21, we might see that a lot. Now, she being experienced at riding a good position feels that this is very difficult for her with this hip angle, with this level torso, having her thigh at 20 degrees. So then we go ahead and we move it forward. So it's just about hitting a 78 degree seat angle. So she says it's starting to get better. So we'll give her about a 23 there and a 78 degree seat angle. Then it continues to get better. Continues to feel easier and more comfortable to generate this 90% of FTP power. So we're going to go to the next one here, where she starts to say that it feels even better. Now we're getting a solid 80 degrees, possibly even 81. And we're getting 26. Very similar to the angles we're observing in the field with the elite riders. So this is really where she liked it the best. And then by the time she gets to the next point, she's starting to not like it so much anymore. She starts to feel like she's kicking behind her. She commented afterwards that she's using different muscle groups, feels awkward pedaling. Okay, and this is very typical to where we start to see this. I'm going to give her about an 83 degrees. So she liked it when her thigh was about 26, was less happy with it in the 27 to 28 degree range. Then we went back the other way and started bringing her from the very steep position to a less steep position so that we run this going in both directions. So on the way back, it was right around here where she started to like it again. So in the 81 and 26 neighborhood.
Now is it starting to get worse, Clara?
Yes, worse.
So, and then again, we'll go finally to where it starts to get worse. So for her, right as she starts going under 80 and under 23 or so is when she starts to notice that the effort feels more difficult for her. So here we have a shot with the motion analysis camera, a little higher speed, the comparison of the very slack, now all the way here at 73, and the 80 degree, and this 17 degree thigh angle and a 25 degree thigh angle. So this is, in the range that we're normally shooting for. And again, combination crank length, saddle height is to be correct, saddle fore aft, a variety of factors here. And every rider's not going to pick the same exact spot, but they're going to pick pretty close to within this range in a great majority of cases. We can get an idea of exactly what is changing here on the Vertex by doing an overlay of these two pictures. So this very clearly shows on the left what happens to the rider as the Vertex swings through its range from 73 to, in this case, 80 or 81 degrees. So first of all, we can see the bottom bracket here moving radially from the contact point. We can see that her knee, her thigh gets pushed upward by that slacker 73 degree seat angle. And in fact, you can even see that her pelvis gets pushed back a little bit, a little more rounding in the back. Here, as she gets to the steeper angle, opens up the hip angle. Torso relaxes, less bend here, more clearance between the thigh and the torso, better able to generate power. There's actually also less dorsiflexion of the foot. So there's no doubt in our minds, and we see it again and again, that a hip angle such as this is critically important for TT or tri position, shared by the best riders in the world. And a great way to determine where this is through use of the Vertex Fit Cycle because of its unique ability to swing through the hip angles without changing any of the other fit variables, and then to dial in on a very granular basis to exactly what the optimal hip angle for the rider is, and crank length as well as part of that equation. And finally, to just look at the Vertex Fit Cycle function a little more closely, we've been swinging through ranges of seat angles this whole video, talking about changing that while leaving the saddle height constant. And that's one of the amazing things about this platform, in that we can swing through that large range and remain at a constant saddle height. We can see here in the overlay what happens to the rider between 73 and 81 degrees here, and that essentially bottom bracket is just swinging radially. That rider's knee angle does not change, knee flexion does not change, and we're just basically taking a slack position and rotating it to a steep position without changing anything else. But once again, we can see the effect that it has on her overall body position, the tension in the position here versus more relaxed and flat, the rolled back pelvis versus the forward tilted pelvis. So the Vertex provides an amazing platform for both performance optimization and research into these various aspects.